For the past few weeks, we've been checking in with William J. Kelly, a reporter in Chicago, to get a feel for what's going on in the Windy City. And they had a pretty large weekend with a lot of rain, a lot of high-flying fast cars on a street race with NASCAR, but also continued gun violence throughout the city. And joining us to talk about all of that here with Springfield's Morning News, I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk, William Kelly joining us by Zoom. William, thanks for taking time with us this morning. Let's go ahead and get on into it. What's going on in Chicago?
God bless you. Thank you for having me, Greg. Yeah, it was, I definitely, like you said, a very interesting weekend in Chicago. We had, the usual 30 plus shootings, a dozen plus fatalities, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. We have a growing number of armed robberies where a car pulls up, two or three guys jump out, guns drawn, and rob just people on the street. This is happening all over Chicago, but it's also happening in neighborhoods like Lincoln Park, which I'm sure your listeners are probably familiar. Very, probably one of the nicer neighborhoods in the city, historically speaking, and where you have one person walking the dog or walking to get coffee, and they're all of a sudden they have a gun to the head, and they're having their purse, their phone stolen, and their lives threatened. And a number of people are just saying after they've been robbed that they just want to move out of Chicago. So it would be disturbing even if we had a mayor that took this seriously. But sadly, our current Mayor Johnson used that weekend, instead of talking about the armed robberies or the shootings or the murders, to appoint a deputy mayor for migrant rights, a woman named Beatrix Ponce de Leon. Ironically enough, she's named for a Spanish conquistador, apparently. We have one more example of the mayor of Chicago putting migrants' rights over citizens' rights.
So obviously the crime issue still ongoing, something that we hear more of, and we don't really see too much by way of real solutions to address these things. The governor, we talked last half hour in Highland Park, not too far from you guys there in Chicago, and he was remembering the 1-year anniversary of the mass shooting there on Independence Day in 2022, and he said more needs to be done. Go after the weapons. Go after the weapons. We need more weapons bans in not just the state of Illinois, but also across the country. When it comes to this issue, what do you think's at the core of this? What's percolating under the surface of society that's causing strong arm robberies in the north part of Chicago, regular block parties erupting into people opening fire, carjackings up, the vast array of robberies and other violent crime that's happening? What do you think's at the core of this?
Well, from what I'm hearing from the victims of crime, they're wishing that they had a gun with them when they were robbed. I hear this even from police on the street saying that they can't be everywhere. You need to be your own first responder. So there seems to be a fundamental disconnect in terms of how real citizens and real first responders feel about this, this issue, and the way our elected officials feel about it. The people, there have been, I think, 50 mass shootings in Illinois since the Highland Park parade mass shooting. And I would probably guess that a vast majority of those took place in the city of Chicago. I can tell you from the cases that I've studied, the shooters were not, FOID card or concealed carrying weapons. They were, in many cases, repeat offenders who were already out on bond for gun offenses. So if these gun crimes really were the answer, or these gun laws really were the answer to reducing gun crime, then we wouldn't be having the shootings in the city of Chicago that we have. I think that it's sadly appears to be the opposite, that these gun laws are not only not reducing gun violence in Chicago, they almost seem to be accelerating them.
Well, and you've got the FOID card, the firearm owner identification card that law-abiding citizens need to have in the state of Illinois in order to purchase or own firearms in the state. And that's been around since the 60s. But
Right.
you have, the Highland Park suspect having a FOID card, legally purchasing those weapons. The Aurora mass shooter back in 2019 having a FOID card, purchasing weapons. So it doesn't really seem that the FOID card even is doing what they say it's supposed to be doing. Let alone if we see, the nearly 7 months here that states had a ban on semi-automatic weapons. That's a long duration of time. It doesn't seem to have really reduced the amount of violent crime, not just in Chicago, but in Decatur and Peoria and elsewhere throughout the state of Illinois. We're talking with William J. Kelly. He is a reporter on the streets in Chicago. William, you also had NASCAR. It was thought that the rains that were coming, the flash flooding that happened was going to ultimately be the end of NASCAR, but it did go off. How do you think the city fared with NASCAR over the weekend?
Well, everyone that I interviewed said it was a complete disaster. I had just returned from a very short trip to Boston, and arrived back in Chicago literally the day of for the beginning of this NASCAR race, and of course the historic flooding, and it was such a contrast. The clean, safe, beautiful streets of Boston, people brimming with pride in their city of Boston. Contrast that with Chicago, dirty, dangerous, and people. I think the people in Chicago have taken a real hit to their pride. We hear a lot of politicians every election year talking about the tale of two cities, right? And what they usually mean is, the Chicago neighborhoods that are prosperous or once were prosperous, or versus the Chicago neighborhoods that are disadvantaged right now. Obviously, all Chicago neighborhoods are disadvantaged under the current administration. You have. Or they when they talk about the tale of two cities, they're usually talking about safe neighborhoods versus unsafe neighborhoods in Chicago. Sadly, now every neighborhood in Chicago is unsafe. So it really hurt me personally, not only as a reporter, but as a lifelong Chicagoan who loves Chicago, to see Boston so clean, so safe, so proud. And then on this 4th of July weekend, so to speak, that also makes it even more poignant for people who were raised to love God and country and our rights as citizens, right? The rights that our founding fathers guaranteed for us with their bravery, unbelievable bravery. I mean, when you walk the streets and you actually can see Paul Revere's house where, the stable where he literally, took to the streets to warn his fellow patriots about the British, and you think to yourself, my God, it's where are the Paul Reveres today? Where are the leaders that say, whoa, let's stop focusing on migrant rights and start focusing on citizens' rights.
We're talking with William J. Kelly. He is a reporter in Chicago, giving us kind of a flavor of what's going on in the city. And William, you have a lawsuit against the former Chicago mayor, Lori Lightfoot. It's been a year since that has taken to the courts. Where are we at on that? And do you have access with the new Johnson administration?
Well, there you go again, Greg. You're good. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. All right. It was literally a year ago at a press conference, Mayor Lori Lightfoot's press conference, where she was announcing her great NASCAR race, that I asked her the question, how is NASCAR going to help the citizens of Chicago? What does that add to shut down downtown Chicago? On a 4th of July weekend? when the citizens of Chicago simply want to be able to enjoy their city. And it was getting too close to the mayor's reelection. So she just couldn't handle apparently any more direct questioning from a single reporter in the city of Chicago. So she had my media credentials yanked. And we've been in federal court ever since, trying to get my city of Chicago media credentials back. It's a classic First Amendment lawsuit. And I do expect something one way or the other to happen this week. It's been 1 year. It's a classic First Amendment case. If we don't get the media credentials, Mayor Lightfoot's gone. If we can't get our media credentials back under the new mayor, then we're just going to have to add Mayor Johnson to the lawsuit. If you go to reporterwilliamjkelly.com, you can read the lawsuit. The truth has nothing to hide. Read it for yourself, word for word. It's up there. There's a tax deductible GoFundMe, my legal defense fund, if you want to support it. I know you, obviously, better than anybody, understands that legal precedent. If I lose this lawsuit, it's going to only give mayors and other tyrants around the state or the country the opportunity to use my lawsuit to deplatform other reporters, radio hosts, etc. So I'm asking people, take a look at reporterwilliamjkelly.com. Classic First Amendment. If you support it, please make a donation and or say a prayer. If money's tight, just say a prayer, and hopefully this week or next week when we talk, I'll have some good news.
We'll be looking for that update. William J. Kelly, reporter in Chicago, greatly appreciate you taking the time with us, and hopefully we do get an update on that when we chat next week, all right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
It is Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's news and